Hi, folks. Time to whip out another Sty Story. Oh, sorry about that. I had to get comfortable. Okay, this Sty Story was suggested by, again, another one of my viewers, Jim Dunn. Now, Jim suggested a bunch of topics also for Sty Stories. And between him and Calvin, yeah, they're the only two that are really pushing it. Jack Walsh, too. He's given me some really good suggestions. Excuse me. So, as always, before we get started, don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll be able to subscribe right up here by clicking my ugly mug. And right over here, there'll be some videos that you might want to check out, some old Sty stories, and a video that is randomly picked based on your watching habits. Okay, but if you're thinking about it right now, down below, click the subscribe. Get attached to the Sty North channel. Okay, we'll get on with this story. This is from Jim Dunn, as I said, and Jim asked me to do a Sty story on my coldest night ever. Okay, now I would think that this night was the coldest, not just the coldest night I've experienced, but the coldest night that my ex-wife and my 4 children ever experienced. Now, this was when we were living out in northwestern Montana. The winter we spent up in an old turn-of-the-century cedar log cabin. Now, this cabin was rough. Oh, it gave a whole new definition to the word rough. When we first found the cabin, it had a cedar shake roof on it, and that was it. Nothing on the inside, no form of ceiling or anything like that. Just cedar shake roof, and a lot of it, you if you really looked, you could see a little bit of sky here and there. Roof was good compared to the walls. The walls you could see in between every log. So we chinked the logs with old rags throughout the cabin the best we could. Winter was setting on. We didn't have time to do it properly. We had to have the cover. We got it chinked as quick and the best we could. All we had to heat that log cabin, now that log cabin was about 16 by 20, right about there, was right smack in the middle of the cabin. I had a sheet metal stove made to heat a room that was maybe 12 by 12, not made to heat a full cabin. So there's a story in itself how I got that sheet metal stove, but I won't do that in this one. Now, we had a spell where it was averaging 20 below zero, and that stretch went for 11 days, where the warmest it would get would be about maybe 8 or 10 degrees below zero Fahrenheit. And the coldest we got was 31 below Fahrenheit. So we figured it averaged about 20 below for that 11 days. And that was morning, day, and night. I mean, it was all the time cold like that. There was no such thing as, oh, it warmed up a little. No, no. Below zero is below zero. I don't care what you say. So, we managed to keep the cabin at about 45, 50 degrees with that sheet metal stove through the majority of that cold spell. But we ended up with 3 of those 9 days where it stayed between 25 and 30 below zero standing temperature with wind chills of minus 50. The wind was blowing. And that leaky old cabin, all of that air coming in through those old logs. Well, what we had was we didn't have beds or bunks built up off the floor. What we had were mattresses, box springs with mattresses on them, sitting directly on the floor. And for our kids, all 4 of them were little guys. I mean, the oldest boy was 9. The youngest one was like 3. All 4 of those kids, we had a queen-size bed for them. And all 4 of them kids snuggled in that bed together. And that bed was covered with a down military sleeping bag, actually 2 of them, and like 4 quilts. Them kids could crawl underneath that, and their body heat alone stayed in it. I mean, it stayed in it. The ex-wife and I, we had a full size, and we were right by the wood stove. Now, you'd think we'd have the kids right by the wood stove. No, because if a spark ever got out of that wood stove, or it got too hot and caught the bedding on fire, we could lose a kid before we even realized that their bed was on fire. So no, they were a little farther away from the stove, but not much. And it got so cold, I was stoking that stove all night and keeping the sheet metal white hot. I know darn well if you were to take a stick and poke the side of that sheet metal stove, it would have just pushed right in. The metal was so hot that it was ready to start to sag from the heat. Didn't matter. If you got more than 3 feet from that stove, the inside temp of that cabin on the outside walls, the inside temp was -5. But that was 25 degrees warmer than outside. So we were sleeping in our winter clothes with our jackets on, underneath all of these layers of bedding, just to stay warm. I fell asleep at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And when I woke up about 2 hours later, about 6 in the morning, the stove was almost out. So I'm going to scurry out of the bunk, out of my bed, and get that fire stoked up. I go to get out of my bed, and it isn't going to let me out. The temperature difference because of the stove and the bitter cold created frost on the floor. It froze our bedding to the floor. I could not get out of the bed because the blankets that were touching the floor had frozen to the floor. I had to fight with those bed covers to tear them loose from the floor, to get out of bed, to get that fire stoked. I fixed breakfast for everybody, and what I did was I made oatmeal with a bunch of raisins in it, and maple syrup, and something full of carbs so that we had lots of fake energy to help burn to keep warm. I made breakfast and I bowled it all up for everybody, and nobody was allowed to get out of bed. I fed them right in their beds. And I was fully decked out in winter gear just to be able to do that. And I have to say, that was the coldest night ever. Coldest night that I've ever experienced in my life. And all 6 of us survived it. I mean, that was really surprising to be exposed to that extreme cold. That anything, and then we went through the cabin later that morning, when everybody decided they're going to just dress for it and get up. We went through the cabin, and almost everything in the cabin was froze to the floor. I had a big wooden chair. I'm going to do a video about the chair. They called it the idiot chair. Now, you'll find out in that story. Its wooden legs touching the floor had frozen to the floor. So it was that cold. It was that cold. Coldest night ever. So thanks for tagging along for this story. There's always more. There will be more. And don't forget, subscribe. Whoops. Catch a couple of videos on the side. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the bell. We'll see you all next time. This is Sty saying, you all have a nice day. Bye-bye.